Welcome back. Welcome to the deep dive. We are absolutely thrilled to have you with us today.
Yeah, we really are.
Because if you're someone who is intensely curious about how the gears of history actually turn, then you know you are in the exact right place.
Absolutely.
Our mission today is to dive deep into a fascinating and, frankly, terrifying stack of historical analysis we've been going through. We are looking at a pivotal moment, the Night of the Long Knives.
Right.
Specifically, we're going to uncover how modern democracy legally, bureaucratically, and culturally dismantled itself over a single bloody weekend. This was in the summer of 1934. And it transitioned fully into an absolute dictatorship.
It really is a sobering timeline to look at. And to truly understand how this happened, I mean, we have to start by setting the stage for you. We need to look at Germany in 1933 and early 1934.
Right, setting the context.
Exactly. You have a nation that is completely reeling. The roots of this crisis go back decades to the late 19th century with this rising cultural obsession with what they called social Darwinism.
Yeah, I saw that. For those of us who might be rusty on the term, what exactly did social Darwinism look like in the context of 1930s Germany?
Essentially, it was the twisting of biological evolution into a political ideology.
Okay.
It was this pervasive, really dark belief that human races and nations were in a constant, brutal struggle for survival, and that only the most ruthless would or should survive.
Wow.
Yeah, it normalized extreme anti-Semitism and violence as just natural laws.
Yeah.
Now you take that already toxic cultural undercurrent and you turbocharge it with the shattering loss of the First World War.
Right, because the trauma of that loss just can't be overstated.
Not at all.
Imagine you are an average citizen there at the time. You survived severe starvation. You've seen total chaos in street battles. You've lost vast territories, and your entire system of government just collapsed when the Kaiser was forced out.
Exactly. And on top of that, you have the searing impact of the Great Depression. It hit Germany harder than almost anywhere else in Europe.
Right. Massive unemployment.
Massive, widespread unemployment. And hovering over all of this economic ruin was a profound, deeply seated fear among middle-class and conservative Germans. They were terrified of Bolshevism.
That's what happened in Russia.
Right. They looked at Russia and genuinely feared a violent communist revolution was going to just take over their own streets.
Okay, let's unpack this, because this atmosphere of intense fear is exactly where the fatal miscalculation happens, isn't it?
It really is.
The traditional conservative elite, the people actually running the country, they were looking at this chaotic landscape. They see the rising National Socialist Party led by Adolf Hitler, an Austrian-born former corporal with this brilliant gift for populist speaking. And they make a choice.
They do. See, the Weimar Republic, the democratic government, lacked legitimacy in the eyes of these conservatives.
Right.
They thought it was weak. They thought it was riddled with communist sympathizers. So you have these powerful figures like President Paul von Hindenburg. He was an enormous 85-year-old war hero with a massive walrus mustache.
Right, they really paint a picture of it.
Right. Oh, yeah. To the German people, Hindenburg was the literal personification of Prussian rigor, meaning strict aristocratic military discipline and traditional values.
And he's working alongside the former Chancellor Franz von Papen, who really embodied the wealthy old conservative establishment.
Right, and these elites were feuding with each other. They were completely out of options, and they made the catastrophic mistake of bringing Hitler in as chancellor in January 1933.
They thought they could use him.
Exactly. They genuinely thought of him as a hired gun. They believed they could ride this populist tiger to restore order, use his base of support, and keep him entirely under their control.
It's amazing how often history shows us that you just can't control the tiger once you're riding it.
What's fascinating here is the massive paradox at the heart of the early Nazi regime. Hitler's fundamental promise to the German public was a return to order. He looked at a terrified middle class and told them he would end the chaos.
But his own people were the ones causing it.
Exactly. The very people causing the chaos, the ones smashing shop windows and brutally beating political opponents on the sidewalks, were his own paramilitary force. He was actively fomenting disorder on the streets while simultaneously promising to be the only man strong enough to cure it.
And that brings us to the stormtroopers, the SA. If we're going to understand this crisis, we really need to talk about them.
Yeah.
Our sources mention the SA, or Sturmabteilung, bizarrely started out in the 1920s as the so-called gym and sports section of the party.
Yes, which was basically just a polite euphemism for Hitler's personal squad of bouncers. They were thugs meant to protect Nazi meetings and intimidate rivals.
But by 1933, they had swelled into something entirely different. Just how big was this squad of bouncers by the time Hitler became chancellor?
It's almost hard to wrap your head around. They had absorbed countless other angry, unemployed veteran groups. By 1934, we are talking about 4.5 million paid-up, brown shirt-wearing men.
4.5 million.
Yeah.
That is a staggering number. How did the actual German military feel about this massive armed militia roaming the country?
They were absolutely terrified of them. Remember, to put this into perspective for you, the actual German army had been severely restricted by the Treaty of Versailles following World War I.
Right. The international community capped them.
Capped them at just 100,000 men to prevent them from ever starting another war. So you have a professional army of 100,000 dwarfed by a rogue political militia of 4.5 million.
Which sounds like an absolute powder keg.
Oh, it was.
And the man holding the match is the leader of the SA, Ernst Röhm. Can you walk us through who Röhm actually was?
That's gladly. Röhm is a fascinating historical figure. He was a veteran of the Western Front from Munich. He had seen brutal combat. In fact, a shell had blown part of his nose off at the Battle of Verdun. Physically, he was this imposing, scarred, strutting bruiser. He even spent a bizarre stint in the 1920s running the Bolivian army before coming back to Germany.
He was an explicitly gay man, which seems wildly contradictory for a high-ranking official in the Nazi Party. How did he survive that?
It was an open secret. Hitler actually gave him a pass on it for years, simply because Hitler desperately needed the absolute loyalty of those millions of stormtroopers that Röhm commanded.
Right.
Röhm was the quintessential member of what they called the Front Generation. He romanticized the trenches and the brotherhood of combat. More importantly, he believed street fighting was Nazism.
So he wasn't interested in putting on a suit and playing politician.
Not at all. He thought political compromise with the old conservative elite men like Hindenburg and von Papen was a massive betrayal of their radical roots. Röhm wanted what he called a second revolution.
What does that entail?
He wanted the SA to literally absorb the traditional army of 100,000 men and become the official permanent state defense force.
Which puts Hitler in an impossible situation. He's trying to ride two horses at once. He needs the street muscle of Röhm's SA to keep his power base intimidated, but he absolutely cannot afford to alienate the traditional army or the conservative establishment. Because President Hindenburg, who has the total unquestioning loyalty of the professional army, is dying. If Hitler loses the army's backing, they could declare martial law, install a military dictatorship, and just wipe him out entirely.
Right. And the tipping point arrives in the early summer of 1934. The traditional army commanders are thoroughly disgusted by the SA's thuggish behavior and constant encroaching on their territory. The Defense Minister General von Blumberg and President Hindenburg finally draw a line in the sand. On June 21st, they summon Hitler to Hindenburg's massive estate in East Prussia.
That must have been a tense meeting.
It was. They deliver an implicit yet crystal clear threat to Hitler. Either you bring your own movement to heel, get the SA off the streets and stop this unrest, or we will declare martial law and the army will take over the country.
Wow. And while Hitler is getting squeezed by the President, Röhm is growing increasingly frustrated on the other side. Note that after Hitler tries to force a compromise, Röhm's overheard privately calling Hitler a ridiculous corporal. He even tells his men that Hitler has no loyalty and threatens that if they can't achieve their second revolution with Hitler, they'll just have to do it without him.
Saying something like that in the Nazi regime was unimaginably dangerous. You did not threaten the Führer. And what Röhm didn't realize was that he wasn't just dealing with Hitler. A group of incredibly dangerous predators within Hitler's own inner circle were already circling. They were sensing blood in the water.
If the SA was causing so much trouble, who else was in Hitler's corner to help him counter them?
Well, Hitler had other extremely ambitious men who were busy building their own empires. You have the SS, which was Hitler's elite, fanatical Praetorian Guard.
For those who might not know, what does SS actually stand for?
It stands for Schutzstaffel, which roughly translates to Protection Squadron. They were much smaller than the SA, around 50,000 men at this time, but highly disciplined and led by a man named Heinrich Himmler. And alongside Himmler, you had Hermann Goering, who was the interior minister for the massive state of Prussia.
It's so interesting to see how these men operated behind the scenes. It wasn't just a political disagreement. They were actively taking over the state's legitimate infrastructure right.
That is a crucial point. If you want to understand how authoritarianism cements itself, look at the bureaucracy. They didn't start with a coup. Goering legally detached the political intelligence units from the regular Prussian police.
Okay.
Then he merged them to form the Gestapo, the secret state police. And here is where it gets incredibly calculated. Goering and Himmler actually hated each other.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but they hated Ernst Röhm more, so Goering handed control of the Gestapo over to Himmler.
So they are quietly centralizing police and intelligence power on a national level.
Precisely. It's a textbook authoritarian move. By merging these departments, they effectively handed Hitler the precise institutional tools he would need to carry out a massive coordinated purge.
But they still needed a pretext. I mean, they couldn't just arrest the leader of 4.5 million men without a reason.
Yeah.
So Himmler, Goering, and the army chiefs approach Hitler with a completely fabricated narrative. They tell him Rome is planning an imminent armed coup against him. And to make it sound even worse, they claim Rome is being funded by 12 million marks from the French government.
Which was an absolute lie. The SA wasn't organized enough for a coordinated coup, and there was certainly no secret deal with the French. But it gave Hitler the justification he needed. So he summons Rome and the senior SA leaders to a meeting at a quiet spa town in Bavaria called Bad Wiessee, supposedly to hash things out and relieve the tension.
Which brings us to this deeply surreal sequence of events on June 28th. Before heading to this spa town in Bavaria, Hitler attends a wedding reception in the city of Essen. And I have to say, what an incredibly terrible wedding guest Hitler must have been.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. He's a strict vegetarian. He doesn't drink alcohol. He doesn't smoke. And he pathologically needs to be the center of attention in every room he enters.
Right, you can just imagine everyone walking on eggshells around him while trying to celebrate.
Oh.
But while he is at this wedding, he receives intelligence that his conservative rivals, Vice Chancellor von Papen and President Hindenburg, are secretly planning to meet without him.
That is the spark that sets the whole purge in motion. Hitler is suddenly gripped by the paranoid fear that the conservative establishment is about to move against him at the exact same time the SA is supposedly planning a coup. He decides he cannot wait.
So what does he do?
He leaves the wedding in a frenzy. He orders the army to be put on alert and tells Goering to go back to Berlin to deal with the conservative political rivals while he personally handles Rome and the SA in Bavaria. He decides to strike both the rogue elements of his own party and his conservative political rivals in one massive, simultaneous blow.
Here's where it gets really interesting. We are now at the dawn of June 30th, 1934. The Night of the Long Knives officially begins. In Berlin, Hermann Goering is pacing his office. And the visual here is wild. He's dressed in this bizarre outfit, a white tunic and white boots, cutting this strange peacock-like figure. He receives the predetermined code word from the propaganda minister, Joseph Goebbels.
The word was colibri, which means hummingbird.
Hummingbird. It's such a delicate word for what was about to happen. Because with that word, the death squads are officially unleashed across the country.
While Goering is directing the slaughter of conservatives in Berlin, Hitler has flown into Munich in the early hours of the morning. He's reportedly in a state of absolute frothing fury. He storms into the Bavarian Ministry of the Interior, screaming at the local SA leaders who had been causing trouble the night before.
Just completely losing it.
Exactly. He is personally ripping the rank badges off their tunics and having them dragged off to prison. Then he forms a convoy of SS men and police and speeds toward the Hanselbauer Hotel in Bad Wiessee.
Can you set the scene for us at Bad Wiessee?
Yeah.
Because the contrast between the environment and the violence is just staggering.
Imagine you are in this quiet, picturesque, bourgeois spa town. It's the kind of place with elderly waiters ticking grandfather clocks in the lobby and the faint smell of sulfur from the baths in the air.
Peaceful.
Very peaceful. It's 6:30 in the morning. Suddenly, Hitler and his heavily armed guards burst into this sleepy hotel. They draw their weapons and literally start kicking down the bedroom doors of the sleeping SA leaders.
And they catch them completely off guard. They find one senior SA leader, Heinz, in bed with an 18-year-old boy.
Yes, and in the chaos, they literally lock them in the hotel's basement laundry room because they don't know what else to do with them yet. And then Hitler personally enters Ernst Röhm's bedroom. According to the first-hand account of Hitler's driver, Hitler stands there with a whip in his hand, two detectives behind him with pistols drawn, and screams that Röhm is under arrest.
How does Röhm react to the man he called a ridiculous corporal kicking his door down?
He looks up sleepily from his pillows, completely confused. Later, amidst all the chaotic arrests and men being shoved into cars, Röhm is seen just sitting placidly in the hotel foyer. He's smoking a cigar, almost bewildered, seemingly thinking this is just a massive, ridiculous misunderstanding that will blow over once Hitler calms down.
But it doesn't blow over. It turns into a nationwide bloodbath.
Hmm.
And the collateral damage, the score settling that happens outside of the SA is staggering. Back in Berlin, who else is getting targeted?
They are systematically wiping out conservative opposition. General von Schleicher, the former chancellor of Germany, is gunned down at his front door alongside his wife by an SS squad. Vice Chancellor von Pappen's speechwriters, who had recently urged an end to the Nazi Revolution, are hunted down and shot. Gustav von Kahr, an old political rival of Hitler's from Munich dating back a decade, is found in a swamp literally hacked to pieces.
It's sheer terror. And because they were moving so fast with zero oversight, terrible mistakes were made. There's this dark, almost Shakespearean level of tragic absurdity with a man named Willy Schmid.
That is one of the most heartbreaking details. Willy Schmid was just a local music critic. He was sitting in his apartment playing the cello for his family when SS men burst in and dragged him away to be shot.
Why?
Simply because he shared the same last name as one of the actual SA leaders they were looking for. They just killed the wrong man. Over the course of the weekend, about 85 people were officially recorded as murdered, though historians agree the real number is likely much higher, possibly in the hundreds.
So let's follow Ernst Röhm to the very end of this nightmare. It's now July 1st. Hitler has hesitated on killing his old comrade, the man who built his street army, but he finally gives the order.
Right. SS men enter Röhm's prison cell in Munich. They leave him with a pistol loaded with a single bullet and a copy of a newspaper detailing his supposed treacheries. They tell him he has 10 minutes to do the honorable thing and end his own life.
And when they come back,
When they return 10 minutes later, Röhm hasn't touched the gun. Instead, in this bizarre theatrical final gesture of defiance, he has stripped to the waist. He is standing there baring his chest to his executioners. He reportedly says, "If I am to be killed, let Adolf do it himself." The SS men simply raise their weapons and shoot him dead.
with the deed done, Hitler has a massive problem on his hands. He just orchestrated the mass murder of German citizens. No trials, no warrants, completely outside the justice system. The public is going to wake up to this reality. How on earth does the government justify it?
His cabinet steps in to fix it with paperwork. They draft a retrospective law consisting of a single chilling sentence. It simply declares that all the murders committed over the weekend were perfectly legal actions taken for the emergency defense of the state.
So what does this all mean? How did the average German citizen react to a leader openly admitting he bypassed the Constitution to slaughter his rivals?
This might be the most crucial insight of our entire deep dive. The German public, by and large, welcomed it.
Welcomed it, after
It's-
dozens of extrajudicial killings.
Yes. You have to put yourself in the shoes of the average citizen we talked about earlier. They were utterly exhausted by the SA's street thuggery. To the middle class, the SA weren't political heroes. They were menacing hooligans making life dangerous. When Hitler crushed them, the public rejoiced. They were entirely willing to trade the foundational rule of law for a quiet, orderly life. They accepted the violence because it was directed at people they disliked or feared.
Wow. They traded their legal protections for the feeling of safety? And what about the army? The traditional aristocratic army that started this whole thing by threatening martial law.
The army was thrilled. The defense minister actually led a public vote of thanks to Hitler. And this sets up the final fatal trap of the entire saga. If we connect this to the bigger picture, just a month later on August 1st, President Hindenburg is on his deathbed. His mind is so far gone he actually mistakes Hitler for the old Kaiser during their last meeting. When Hindenburg dies, Hitler and his cabinet immediately pass a law retiring the office of the president entirely. From then on, there would only be a Führer, a leader, and Reich Chancellor.
But the real kicker is what the army does next. Thinking that they can bind Hitler to them now that the SA is gone, the army commanders suggest a brand new military oath.
Exactly. The army leadership makes an apocalyptic miscalculation. They voluntarily change the military oath. Soldiers would no longer swear loyalty to the German Constitution or to the fatherland or to the Republic. They were ordered to swear an oath of unconditional personal loyalty directly to Adolf Hitler.
That's terrifying.
They thought they were capturing him by making him their patron. In reality, they legally bound the entire military apparatus of the state to the personal whims of a dictator who had just proven on national television, essentially, that he would murder anyone who stood in his way.
It is breathtaking how fast it all happened. Let's summarize the true impact of this transition for a moment. In a single weekend, political rivals were physically erased. The rule of law was retroactively rewritten to excuse mass premeditated murder, and a modern republic willingly handed absolute unchecked power to one man, all in the name of restoring order.
This raises an important question for you, the listener. Why does studying the granular details of this weekend matter to us today? Because it brilliantly, terrifyingly highlights the danger of a society that begins to prioritize the feeling of security over the structure of justice. The people traded their constitutional protections for the illusion of order, and in doing so, they trapped themselves in a machine they could no longer turn off. Authoritarianism rarely announces itself with a villainous laugh. It often arrives disguised as a necessary solution to a crisis.
Think about the psychological trap of retrospective lawmaking we discussed. When a society allows its leaders to commit atrocities in broad daylight and then simply write a new law the very next day, making those actions perfectly legal, it doesn't just destroy the Constitution. It completely rewrites the moral reality of the citizens living under it. What happens to our own moral compass when the law is no longer a reliable shield to protect us, but instead becomes a blank check for those in power to excuse the unthinkable?
It's a haunting question, and one that history demands we never stop asking.
Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We appreciate your curiosity, your time, and your willingness to unpack the complex realities of the past with us. Until next time, keep questioning and keep learning.